Across the globe, as seasons change, so does the mood for millions of people. While some relish in the beauty of fall and winter, others face a hidden struggle. Seasonal Affective Disorder, or SAD, is a type of depression that aligns with the changing seasons. We tend to see that the further we get away from equator, the higher the risk of developing SAD. In areas of North America and Northern Europe, we see prevalence rates up to a staggering 10% of the population being affected by SAD to some extent. I'm Camilla, I'm a psychologist, and in today's video we're going to dive into the heart of SAD. We're going to look at its causes, symptoms, and most importantly, how it can be treated and how we can reduce the impact of SAD. I'll share 7 tips with you for how you can protect your mental well-being during these changing seasons and reduce the impact of SAD. So whether you're battling SAD yourself or you know someone who is, know that you're not alone and that there are things you can do to reduce its impact. So in most cases, the symptoms of SAD appear in late autumn or early winter and go away again with the sunnier days of spring and summer. In these cases, SAD is also referred to as winter depression. But there is another version of SAD where people have the symptoms in spring and summer. This is also referred to as summer depression. A summer depression follows the opposite pattern to a winter depression. We'll typically see the symptoms starting in late spring or early summer and then go away again at the start of autumn. In both winter depression and summer depression, we often see that the symptoms start out quite mild and then get more severe as the season progresses. Because of this, it's really important to be able to spot these patterns and the symptoms before they get too severe and to start taking steps to feel better. Let's have a look at the symptoms that we commonly see in SAD so we know what to be aware of. So most of the symptoms of SAD are the same regardless of whether it's summer or winter depression. You'll probably also recognize a lot of these symptoms from what we generally see from major depressive disorder. The core symptoms of SAD include feeling sad or down most of the day, nearly every day, losing interest in activities that you normally enjoy, having low energy and feeling sluggish, having sleep difficulties, so this can either be sleeping too much or too little, experiencing changing in your eating habits, so again this can either be overeating and gaining weight or having a loss of appetite and losing weight. Another symptom is having difficulties concentrating, feeling hopeless, worthless or guilty, and finally having thoughts of not wanting to live. So as well as these symptoms that are shared between winter and summer depression, there are some symptoms that are more specific to each of them. Let's have a look at some of the symptoms that are specific to winter onset SAD. So when we look at the sleeping difficulties that we saw as part of the general symptoms, what we typically see in winter depressions is that we tend to oversleep. Similar to do with the changes in appetite, we typically see in winter depressions that we experience an increase in appetite and that we crave carbohydrates. This often leads to us gaining weight. Another symptom we typically see associated with winter depressions is experiencing tiredness or low energy. And finally, we see a higher tendency for social withdrawal in winter depressions than we do in summer depressions. This can almost be likened to a sense of hibernation where we isolate ourselves in our homes and don't get out and see people or do activities that we normally do. Now turning to the symptoms that are more specific for summer onset SAD, we also often see difficulty sleeping like we saw in the general symptoms, but in the summer depression it's more likely to be difficulty sleeping and not sleeping enough than it is oversleeping like we saw in the winter depression. In the same way, rather than overeating and gaining weight, we often see in summer depressions that we lose our appetite and that we actually lose weight. And finally, we tend to see a higher risk of experiencing agitation or an increased irritability in summer depression than we typically see in a winter depression. Now, it's obviously important to note that all these symptoms I've just listed are just a reflection of how they commonly appear. Everybody experiences the disorder differently, and not everybody will experience all the symptoms on the list. In order to be diagnosed with SAD, you must have experienced depressive episodes during specific seasons for at least 2 consecutive years. It's also important to note, though, that not everybody who struggles with SAD will experience symptoms every year. Now, like I said earlier, it's normal to feel down some days, regardless of whether it's summer or winter. But if you do recognize multiple of these symptoms that we've just listed, and you generally experience feeling down for multiple days at a time and struggle to get motivated for things you normally enjoy, that's when we need to pay extra attention, and it may be a good idea to seek out your healthcare provider. This is especially important if you feel like your sleep pattern and your eating habits have changed, if you find yourself turning to drugs drugs or alcohol for relaxation, or if you experience ongoing feelings of hopelessness or think about suicide. It's really important to take the signs and symptoms of SAD seriously, and if you do experience any of these things, then I strongly recommend that you seek out help. There's a variety of treatment options available that can help you feel better, and we'll have a closer look at them in a moment. But first, let's have a look at some of the suspected causes of why we develop SAD. Researchers are still working on determining what actually causes SAD. Most studies that have been conducted have looked at winter depression as it's more common and therefore easier to study. As a result of that, we don't know as much about summer depressions as we do about winter depressions. So when we look at the causes, these are predominantly causes for winter depression. Research suggests that one of the causes of winter depression is biological clock change, or changes to our circadian rhythm. When there's less sunlight, your biological clock shifts. This internal clock regulates your mood, sleep, and hormones. When it shifts, you step out of the daily schedule that you're used to, and it can be difficult to adjust to the changes in daylight length. So the decreases in sunlight may disrupt your body's internal clock and lead to feelings of depression. Studies also suggest that imbalances of brain chemistry play a part in developing SAD. Brain chemicals called neurotransmitters send communications between nerves in the brain. One of these chemicals is called serotonin, and this is the neurotransmitter that contributes to feelings of happiness. We know that sunlight helps regulate our serotonin levels, so reduced access to sunlight during winter can cause a drop in serotonin levels, which can affect our mood and essentially trigger a depression. Very much connected to that, we also see that vitamin D deficiency is a potential cause of SAD. You see, our serotonin levels also get a boost from vitamin D, and since sunlight helps to produce vitamin D, less sun in the winter can lead to a vitamin D deficiency. That can affect your serotonin levels and through that your mood. Sticking with the chemical imbalances of the brain for a moment, we also see that melatonin boost can have an impact. Melatonin is a chemical that affects our sleep and our mood. The lack of sunlight that we experience during winter may stimulate an overproduction of melatonin in some people. This can cause us to feel sluggish and overly sleepy, which explains why we tend to oversleep when we're struggling from winter depressions. The good news if you are struggling with SAD is that it is very treatable. Let's have a look at the most common treatment approaches. The first treatment option is unique to winter depression. It's light therapy. In light therapy, we have a special lamp called a light box, which is used to simulate exposure to sunlight. This treatment approach has been used since the 1980s, and there's a lot of good evidence for its effectiveness in treating SAD. The treatment consists of a person sitting in front of a very bright light box for 30 to 45 minutes every day from autumn to spring. The light box is around 10,000 lux, which is about 20 times brighter than normal indoor lights. The light box filters out any potentially damaging UV rays, making this treatment safe for most people. The next common treatment approach for SAD is psychotherapy. Psychotherapy can help people with SAD by teaching them new ways of thinking and behaving and changing habits that contribute to the depression. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is one of the most effective psychotherapeutic approaches for treating SAD. In fact, there's a branch of CBT that's been developed specifically for treating SAD. This is referred to as CBT-SAD. Now, because the onset of SAD is so predictable, some people prefer to start treatment before the onset of symptoms. I've had clients that seek out therapy at the start of autumn because they know that if they don't, they will develop SAD. Going into therapy and seeking help early can help them reduce the impact that SAD end up having for the rest of the season. Now, I live in Denmark and we get very dark and cold winters, so most of my experience as a psychologist is dealing with winter depression. I've personally never had any clients dealing with summer depression, but that's probably because we don't get much of a summer to speak of in Denmark. SAD is a disorder where geography really matters, so other places in the world it'll be more common to see summer depressions than winter depressions. Now, there have been some studies that have compared the effectiveness of CBT-SAD and light therapy, and it turns out that they're equally effective in treating SAD. The main difference that's been noted is that light therapy tends to work quicker, whereas CBT-SAD tends to have longer lasting effects. Moving on to the third treatment option, we've got antidepressant medication. These are the same medications that we see used when treating major depressive disorders, called SSRIs. They work by regulating the serotonin levels in your body, which we saw before can be one of the causes why we develop SAD. One thing that's important to note is that antidepressant medication takes time to work, usually between 4 to 8 weeks, and sometimes clients even describe feeling worse before they start to feel better. Therefore, if you do try out medication, it's important to give the medication time to work before you decide whether it's the right treatment for you. We often see that for the best possible effect, medication can be combined with psychotherapy. And the fourth and final effective treatment option that I've included today is lifestyle adjustments. This is where we can really be proactive ourselves and make changes that help us feel better. So let's have a look at some things we can do to reduce the risk of developing SAT and to reduce the symptoms if we do struggle with the disorder. Because there are some things you can do yourself to prevent SAD from developing and to reduce symptoms if you are experiencing them. Even if you don't have SAD, these tips can help you look after your mental well-being during these seasonal changes. Here are my top 7 tips that can help you prevent and cope with SAD. The first one is to get outside during daylight. If the changes in daylight hours is affecting your mood, you need to make the most of them and get out while you can. Even a cloudy day will provide the body with the light it's craving. Now, if like me, you live somewhere where it's dark when you go to work and it's dark when you get home from work in the winter, then you'll need to take advantage of your lunch break to try to get outside. Try to fit it into your daily routine, even if it might be difficult. And importantly, at weekends when you have more of the daylight hours available to you, try to get out as much as you can. The second tip goes along with that. Try to brighten up your environment. If you do work indoors most of the hours that is bright outside, then try to make sure that you let in as much of the light as possible to the area where you're working. Make sure to keep any curtains or blinds open, and if you can, try to place yourself near a window to get as much light as you can. The third tip is to eat well. It's always really important to eat a healthy, balanced diet to make sure your brain gets everything it needs to function properly. Try to eat little and often, and make sure to drink enough water throughout the day to keep your brain energized and hydrated. If you are struggling with SAD, avoid drinking alcohol as this can worsen your symptoms. It's also worth considering if you need to take any vitamin supplements during the winter months. Like we saw when we looked at the causes of SAD, we see that a vitamin D deficiency can have a negative impact on our mental health. Therefore, it may be worthwhile trying to take some vitamin D supplements to see if that eases your symptoms as well. I actually have a full video about the link between nutrition and our mental health. So if that's something you're interested in knowing more about, I'll leave a link to it right here. Now, the fourth tip is to make sure that you exercise regularly. Doing regular physical activity can help with low mood as well as improve your physical health. We know that exercise is really effective in decreasing symptoms of depression and improving our overall mental well-being. And for double effect, if you exercise outdoors, then you get both the effect of the exercise itself and you get that added benefit of being exposed to more light. So make sure to get outside and get your exercise. It doesn't have to be intensive exercise. In fact, you'd be surprised at how much of an impact just a simple walk can have. The fifth tip is to keep a diary. It can sometimes help to keep a diary either on paper or using an app on your phone. By making notes on how you're feeling on different days and in different situations can help you spot any patterns. This can help you understand what makes you feel better and what makes you feel worse, which can help you make changes that will improve your mental well-being. Tip number 6 is to plan ahead. If you do spot patterns of when you're feeling low, it can help to plan ahead for those difficult days. This might involve stocking up on things you know you'll need or freezing meals in case you don't have the energy to cook. This is also a really effective way of making sure that you keep getting those healthy, balanced, nutritious meals that we need. When scheduling your calendar, it's important to look at when you've got things that you know are likely to drain your energy. When you have those activities in your calendar, make sure to also schedule in time to rest and recover. It's all about keeping balance and making sure that you don't spend more energy than you have available to you. And the 7th and final tip that I have for you today is to stay socially active. Now, because we know that one of the common symptoms of SAD is to withdraw and self-isolate, which only worsens the disorder, we can counteract this by making sure that we see our friends and family. We also know that social support is extremely important when dealing with our mental health. So the more openly we can share our challenges, the easier it is for the people around us to support us. So try to make sure that you stay involved in your social circles and that you stick with your regular activities, especially on the days that you don't feel like it. If you do struggle with SAD, I encourage you to try out these tips to reduce your symptoms and to start to feel better. It can be a really good idea to start early so preferably before the season that you know you're affected by even begins. Don't wait until your symptoms have already worsened to start, as this will only make it more difficult. If SAD is impacting your life negatively or you're worried about your mental health, then I do strongly encourage that you seek out professional help. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. It'll help it reach more people who may benefit from knowing more about SAD, and it'll help me on my mission to spread mental health awareness. I continue to upload psychological insights, tips and tools on this channel, and if you're not already, I'd love for you to subscribe so we can meet again. Thank you for watching this one, take care, and bye for now.